Good morning, this is Pastor Stephen with our Monday encouragement here on this beautiful May morning. Today's encouragement comes from Psalm 27. So I'd like to read the whole thing first to let you hear the word of the Lord this morning, and then I'm going to give one encouragement from it for our Monday morning. Psalm 27 from David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes, it is they who stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war arise against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I have asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will lift me high upon a rock, and now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy, and I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. You have said, seek my face. My heart says to you, your face, Lord, do I seek. Hide not your face from me. Turn not your servant away in anger, O you who have been my help. Cast me not off, forsake me not, O God of my salvation. For my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me in. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Give me not up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they breathe out violence. I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. So on this Monday morning, Psalm 27 is a passage that stuck out to me. And some of you guys may be wondering, how do we pick out which encouragement and which passage we're going to be doing on a weekly basis? So we've kind of narrowed ourselves down to the Psalms. But you'll notice we're not going in order. We're not going Psalm 1, 2, 3, 4. We're picking Psalms each day that are meaningful to us. And so you may ask, how do you pick a psalm or an encouragement to bring each week to us? And I think it varies based on what your preferences are and who you are, what your personality is. But just for me, what usually happens in the course of a week, so I've been typically doing this on Monday morning. What typically happens for me is something in the course of the week just pops out. Not necessarily while reading the Bible, but while listening to others, or while hearing something, or by noticing something in nature, or by a phrase or a word that pops out. And this past week, Psalm 27 just kept popping up to me on social media, with different people offering encouragements, by other people I follow, and Psalm 27 was just one that just kept coming back around. And eventually, you just can't ignore it. God just says you have to do something with this. It becomes a fire in your bones that you just have to share, a fire in your heart that just has to be let out to guide others. And so Psalm 27, that's how I was led to that this week. And one particular verse is one that I'm going to focus on, verse 4. One thing I have asked, O Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. One thing I have asked. I'm asking a lot more than one thing these days. I'm asking a lot of questions, a lot of different ways, to a lot of different people, in a lot of different times. But the Lord, David here is saying one thing to the Lord. There's one thing that I ask for. If I could narrow it down, if I could simplify the complexity of life down to one thing, this is it. That I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. Now, I'm standing here in our sanctuary in our church, which oftentimes does get referred to as the house of the Lord or the Lord's house. And I want to make it very clear this morning. We have not met for 8 weeks in this building as a gathered church, and we probably won't for several more as we deliberate and make plans on when it's safe to come back and when it'd be wise to do so. But I want to make it clear that while, yes, this is a place you can come to encounter the Lord. This is not the house of the Lord that David is talking about. When David says, I want to dwell in the house of the Lord forever so I can gaze upon his beauty, he's not talking about a building. He wasn't talking about a synagogue in his time. He wasn't talking about the actual temple in Jerusalem. And he wasn't talking about a local church even today, a building. This place here, with all the empty pews, is no different than your home, than your workplace, than your surroundings, than a beautiful mountain vista, unless the presence of the Lord is there. What makes this place the church is when people gather here, when God's people gather here to make it the church. One of my favorite pastors in the Seacoast region, Dave Moore, pastors at Exeter Area Christian Fellowship, loves to say this when he introduces and welcomes people to church. He says, this place was not the church, but because you are here, it is now the church, because God's people are indwelling it and are here. And it's the same thing here. This building right now has no deeper meaning than your living room. But God can be present wherever he wants. And it is in that place, in that secret place, where you can encounter the presence of the Lord. That's what David is talking about in verse 4. One thing I've asked that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. He's saying he wants to be in the Lord's presence all the time. So you don't have to come to this building. You don't have to be longing after just coming to this place. We want you back here. We want church to be starting again soon, as quickly as possible, and when it's as safe as possible. We want the Lord to bless that. We want a vaccine to come so we can gather again and sing psalms of praise in this building together with 300 voices. We long for that day. But that's not the ultimate longing. If that is the one thing you're seeking after during this season, I encourage you this morning to, as John Piper encouraged me this week, to pray more audacious prayers, to pray prayers that are deeper and more bold and more extravagant than maybe even you think. So yes, pray to come back to this building one day, but I encourage you to pray an even deeper prayer. Pray a prayer of longing for the Lord to make earth heaven, to make his dwelling place here forever. Pray for the Lord to return. Pray for people to know Jesus to the point around the world that Jesus comes and makes heaven on earth, like he promises in Revelation 20, 21, and 22. That the kingdom of heaven was coming down out of heaven like a bride adorned for her husband, and he made his dwelling place among them. One day, earth will be remade, and it will be heaven on earth. That is our prayer. That is the one thing that I find myself longing after during this season, is yes, to come back and to worship with you here, but more so to worship with the throng of millions and millions of people and believers throughout the ages who believe in Jesus, who long to be in the presence of the King and to sing his praises, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. So yes, this is a beautiful sanctuary. This is a beautiful building, but it is not the ultimate place where God's presence dwells only. So if you've never been back here, we're now walking in the back of the sanctuary, all the way in the very back here, these dark alleyways. And we look forward to the day where we welcome you back into this building. But even from your couch, even from your smartphone, even during your walks outside with your family, even while you listen to music on your own, you can encounter the presence of the Lord as David was inquiring. But one day, this earth, this beautiful earth, on this spring New England day, will be made even more beautiful and even more perfect as a new creation, the New Jerusalem, where God's people dwell with their God. We long for that day. I'd like to leave you with the words of Andrew Peterson. He's a musician who I've been listening to a lot this week, and a lot of his songs have this flavor of the second coming, of this desire and longing for God to come back. This is what he says a couple different times. He uses this phrase, we dream in the night. This is kind of a night time for us while we're in isolation, while we're struggling with this pandemic. A lot of us feel like we're in the night. But this is what he says, 3 different ways he says it. And we dream in the night of a city descending with the sun in the center and a peace unending. I will carry the fire for you. And then he says it again. And we dream in the night of a king and a kingdom where joy writes the songs and the innocent sing them. I will carry the fire for you. And lastly, he says, and we dream in the night of a feast and a wedding and the groom in his glory. When the bride is made ready, I will carry the fire for you. So just like I said, how do we pick out these encouragements each week? We get a fire in our bellies. We get a fire in our bones that we just have to share. Psalm 27 was what the fire was in my bones this week. I wanted to share it with you. But we dream in the night of the day when Jesus makes all things right. Amen.